Welcome, everybody, to the Real Estate Investing 365 podcast. Got a couple of great guests here today. I got Taylor and Jeff Adams. They're in the Boston market. Hey, guys. How's it going?
Hey, good. How are you? Thanks for having us.
Oh, I'm doing good. Thanks for being here. Yeah, I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. Taylor, you just started as a real estate agent, right?
I did, yes. So I've been working in higher education for the last 4 years and finally made the leap. So about a week and a half ago, I have been full-time as a real estate agent.
Okay, cool. And Jeff, what do you do?
So I'm a software engineer. Probably a couple years ago became a manager. So mostly in the robotics space.
Okay, cool. In Boston, that's a good area for that. What's that over there? MIT's over there. They got all kinds of robotics programs.
Oh yeah, lots and lots of it's a very tight-knit community too.
Yeah.
Great.
That's cool. I'd love to go to Boston and check it out sometime.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So so you kind of told me what you do. Give me a brief history of yourselves and, what got you guys started in real estate, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from the Worcester area, so central Massachusetts. And I have always really been passionate about things related to real estate. So I originally went to college to study architecture. I worked at a real estate investing firm. I ended up getting my degree in business entrepreneurship instead of architecture for a number of reasons. And I got my license, my real estate license, my last year in college, but never actually used it. And so when Jeff and I were living together for a few years, we decided to buy our first house. And instead of just getting a single family, we decided we wanted to buy something that would allow us to have our tenant pay for a portion of our mortgage. And that was well before we had any idea that that was house hacking or anything like that.
We'd really just been looking for like a single family house for a little bit. Like Taylor was looking at, on Zillow and stuff, like, oh, look how pretty this house is. And I was like, look how much that mortgage is. And so we sort of, in the Boston market, it's extremely expensive. Yeah, so exactly. We looked and we were like, okay, well, maybe we'll buy a single family this year. And then a few months before we were going to do that, I was like, wait, what about, there's lots of duplexes around here. We were renting in a triplex at the time. Like, what if we were landlords and we, got some of our like mortgage reduced essentially by renting to people? Yeah. So we waited another year and saved up a little bit more for a duplex. Then we bought this duplex in just north of Boston. Probably wasn't the best investment. We didn't even know that Bigger Pockets was a thing at the time. We were just like, oh, I guess we'll find a couple of articles online, like make sure that we're not doing something totally stupid. Yeah. And so we bought it, and one of my coworkers owns two side-by-side duplexes just south of Boston. I was like, oh, that's really awesome that you're doing that. You should check out this site called Bigger Pockets. Yeah. So then I did, and then I realized that I didn't know anything at all. And listened to tons of podcasts, and both of us did that. We bought lots of books and read lots of books and posted in the forums and read the forums all over in Bigger Pockets. And that really made us take off. We thought about how we were gonna invest. So our first thing was, all right, well, so we'll buy our next house in the Boston market, but maybe we won't do an owner occupy this time. So we'll just buy a triplex, and we'll have to save a lot of money because we're gonna need $200,000 for a down payment. So if we save at this rate right now, maybe in 5 or 6 years, we can buy our next investment property.
Right.
Yeah. And so going at those intervals, we were like, that is so awesome. We'll be able to do this, but it's going to take us forever. And so one day, I don't know where we found this article, but it was about this woman and her husband who lived in a large multifamily somewhere down south. And they were just buying up all of these properties. And I was like, well, that's great if you live in a market where things are cheap. I mean, we live up here. We can't afford to do that. And this light bulb went off where it was just kind of like, well, why can't we do that? I mean, could we invest somewhere at a distance? And how does that work?
This was before we heard of David Green and before we'd even listened to a single podcast on Bigger Pockets.
Right.
So totally by the seat of our pants. And we started exploring different markets down south. And we eventually landed on Tennessee. We flew down and we met with a property manager who is also the agent, and he showed us around Memphis, showed us a bunch of different houses, and we were just sold. And he's amazing. I mean, you talk about how your team has to be so on point to really make it a success, and it's so true. So we started working with him, and we got our first deal down in Memphis just a few months later. I'm not even sure what that timeline looked like.
Yeah, I think it was 9 months after we bought the duplex north of Boston, we bought our first single family in Memphis.
Yep.
And so that was 6 months ago,
yeah,
7
it was
months
back
ago.
in January or February that we got that one.
Okay, so cool. So your very first purchase, was the duplex, or did you buy a house before that? You said a house hacking?
So the duplex was our first one.
Okay, and what year is that? That was in 2018.
2018, yeah, March 2018 we got it.
Which is pretty cool to know, because a lot of people that I talk to nowadays, they got started in real estate investing in 2010, 11. A lot of people haven't done anything for the last couple of years because everybody thinks it's the top of the market and everything's overpriced. Well, it is, or it might seem that way rather, but it's because we're used to these down rates, right? These down prices that have been from 2010 to 2015 is like an abnormally low time. So really, as long as the numbers make sense for you guys, right? And if you can do it that way, you got into that property and it still makes money. So just shows that we can still buy properties in 2019.
Absolutely. And I mean, the other thing too, when we were living in Somerville, Mass, so just north of Boston, and we were paying, I don't know, like $2,200 for rent. And that was essentially a mortgage. So we're thinking, well, we don't want to rent forever because it's not going towards anything. We really want to buy something, but how can we buy something that we would want to live in, but we could actually afford? And so house hacking was the solution to that.
Sweet.
And it was really we wanted to get rents, and we also bought a fixer upper. So
yes.
It was sort of like the two pieces of it. So yeah, we probably overpaid, maybe in a couple of years, it'll be worth less than we bought it for. I don't know. Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But we're still adding value to it. We're getting rents every month. We're paying at this point, I think we're paying $800 less a month than we were when we were renting. So that's a huge win already.
Yeah.
And then, what we're going to end up doing is probably condoizing the units and selling them off later. So around here, you can do that and you make a lot more on it. Yeah. So in the end, we're going to make money on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
That's a great strategy. Kind of the appreciation and the cash flow. It's kind of that's what we're shooting for either way. At least what we should be shooting for. Don't just bank on one or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's dig in on that a little bit more. So since that was your first property, neither of you had owned a home before the duplex, right? So what type of a loan did you end up getting for that property?
So we did an FHA for that. So I think we ended up paying 4% down.
Yep, 3.5.
Was it 3.5?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. So for those who don't know, FHA is a first-time homeowners association loan, right? FHA.
Federal Housing Authority loan. It is, you don't necessarily have to be a first-time home buyer. That actually is something that a lot of people think. And now that I'm a real estate agent, I can explain that to people.
Yes.
But actually, it is just a loan that allows you to pay less by the Federal Housing Authority. And there's another version of that, which I wish that we had gotten, a 203K, which would have allowed us to pay construction costs within the loan. But we didn't get that. We just got a standard FHA, so we could put a small percent down on the property.
So you're able to buy up to 4 units, right, with the FHA loan?
Yeah,
yes.
And it's pretty cool because it has tiers where, if you have a single unit, you'll get this much, and it depends on the market. Different towns have different amounts that they'll allow. Around here, a single family house with an FHA, the last time I looked, you could get $550,000. And that's because the Boston market's so expensive. But with a 3-family house, that goes way up to $800,000. And your monthly payments are really high because you're putting less down, but it gives you a really nice entry. So if you can balance out the numbers, it's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so how did you guys find it? Did you guys use an agent, or how did you come across the deal?
Yeah, we used an agent. We looked in a bunch of different areas with her, and this was really, we always talk about this. This was one of the only properties that didn't need a full gut job. A lot of the places that we saw, we wouldn't be able to live in them immediately. There was one in downtown of the area where we live, and the return pipe was leaking on
it
the
was
floor.
gross. There was a million people, and yeah, like we go down in the basement, there's pipes leaking, there's asbestos wrap everywhere, there's scorch marks around all of the light sockets and
And
stuff.
we were like, wow, we've never owned a home before, and we'd have to live in this.
Yeah.
That seems scary. So
Yeah.
this is actually livable. It's a lot of cosmetic. It actually was built in 1890, so it's old and it needs a lot of work, but it's much better than some of the other places that we looked.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, there's a ton of old properties out there. I'm out in California, and we have an old property, and it might be like, built in the 20s, and they want a historical whatever reference to that property. But in Boston, man, there's properties that are 250 years old, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
We have we live pretty close to Salem, Massachusetts. Witch trials and all that good stuff, and most of the houses out there are 1700s, 1600s.
It's pretty interesting. You go in and like the houses were just built totally different out there. You'll have like servants' quarters in some of them.
Yes.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
That is cool.
A lot of history.
Heck yeah. Well, that's cool. So what were the key factors that led you to being able to do this? Because a lot of people, they have this idea and they think they want to go do it, and they're like, it just never comes to fruition. You know what I mean? They just analysis by paralysis, and they just sit and wait for years and years and never ever make it happen. So what do you know of any key factors you think that kind of really got you just moving on this?
I mean, honestly, I think part of it was me just pushing for it really, really hard. Like just looking at the numbers on the places and not getting stuck. Like we knew we weren't going to find the perfect house. Like that just wasn't going to happen. Like, we were hoping that we could find a triplex that would make it so we wouldn't have to pay anything at all towards our mortgage. And that would have been great. But when we were looking at the time, it was, like December. And so the inventory was really low, but we wanted to buy before spring when the prices shot up. So we're like, well, we're not going to find the perfect place. So let's just find a place that works well for us, where the numbers are still good. And so, yeah, we basically just decided to not go for perfection. And it was going to be a fixer-upper anyway. So we knew that we'd make it better over time.
Right. You just have to get going. It's just like an analogy would be like working out, right? If you're out of shape, you just have to take that first step. You need to start eating a little bit better, and then you'll start feeling a little bit better, and you feel better, then you can start working out, and you work out, then just a big circle, right? So that's good. I'm glad you guys took the jump. I'm sure there was some mistakes that you guys made. Want to expand on any of those? Maybe pinpoint one or two?
I mean, like we always say, like if we were going to do it again, we probably wouldn't buy this house. And maybe that's true and maybe it's not. But like, there's problems with the house for sure. It was built in 1890 and there's a literal like cliff behind the house. Like it's like 10 feet from where I'm sitting. There's like a 50-foot cliff.
Yeah.
And it comes right down to our house. So all of the water just rushes right into our house. And so the way that houses are built here, at least, is we have these fieldstone foundations, and then you have a wood plate that sits on top of those. And built way back in the day, they weren't pressure treated wood, so if there's water coming and they rot. So we have some rot there, and so yeah, that's like reno that we can do to the house, but it's not value add, right? It's not like a cosmetic repair to like make a bathroom really nice. So we'd probably avoid issues like that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, because of just the prices around here and getting into this house, and like Jeff was saying, some of the problems, we put ourselves in a situation where we had to do a lot of the work ourselves. We couldn't afford to pay someone to do all of the work that needs to be done with the property. So that takes away time from us to be able to analyze deals, or to be showing houses, or whatever we need to do. Right now, for instance, our tenant just turned over and we are in the process of laying down new flooring. We just put up a new ceiling, and we're doing that all ourselves. And that's time that we're just, putting into the property, which is, sweat equity. It's amazing, but it's also taking away time from other things. So it's, it's opportunity cost.
But on the other hand, the mistakes are great because we learn so much from them. Like, I mean, a house built in 1890 just has so many problems to learn from, right? Like, it went through all of the things that you could go through. Like, there's asbestos, there's lead paint, there's foundation issues. Like, we've just learned a ton about houses, so we know what to look for, especially in this area moving forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, like you said, there's always opportunity cost, but for the first couple of deals, I think it's great to like learn it, like you're saying, and really get in there. So then if their next deal, if you get another deal in Boston, then a contractor can't kind of come and pull the wool over your eyes and take advantage of you quite as much. But that's one of my goals, is get more, get an assistant or something, you know, like kind of push the stuff off, you know, and say, well, okay, well, I need to focus on finding deals, and I'm not going to focus on going over to that house and doing yard work today.
Exactly.
That's kind of,
finding that balance.
Yeah, finding that balance. Well, cool. Well, good. That sounds like it's working out great for you guys. So you said now you have a 5-unit property down in Memphis and a single family in Memphis, correct?
So we have the single family right now. We're about to close on the 5-unit. If all things work out in the next, few weeks or so.
We're certainly learning a lot from that one.
Yep. Our first commercial purchase. So the loan process is just completely different.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that. What's different between a commercial loan and so what is a commercial loan? Why would you need it? Just because it's 5 units, or what is it? Tell me a little bit.
Yeah, so it's basically, so for a residential loan, like a standard loan, you get 1 to 4 unit count. That's, like basically normal people buy that. For commercial, they consider 5 and above. It's typically like a company or some sort of organization that buys that. A 5 units obviously is really small, so you can still, it's still a lot of individuals doing that. But for the banks, they just send it to a different department. Like, you don't work with the same people. And for anything, insurance is different. It's just considered a different asset class. It's multifamily. So the loan process is not it's not as much about you, and we don't send in W-2s for that one. We just send in our tax returns from the previous year. So they make sure that, we made a decent amount of money. We should have enough in savings. But then it's, there's all sorts of paperwork. We're going through Wells Fargo for this loan. And I'm sure all the other big, national lenders have this, but there's just a lot of paperwork to do. It takes a long time to go through the process.
I think the big difference between the residential, a loan for a residential property and for a commercial property, is that for residential, it's all about the buyer, and for a commercial property, it's all about the property itself. So what is it going to cash flow? What do the adjacent properties look like? What's the environmental impact? They want all of that information. So I feel like when we get a residential loan, I'm like, oh yeah, I got all those documents there. I have them filed. I have my organizational system. And then with this commercial loan, they're asking me for things that I wouldn't even know where to start looking for that. So it's just complete learning curve. And that's kind of the really exciting thing about real estate, is right when you think you're like, I got this figured out, you don't.
Yeah, there's always something more.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of a cool thing about commercial too, is what I like. That's why I try to focus on buying 5 or more units, is because it's not just based off of comps, right? It's based off of a little bit of comps, but off of the income that the property makes. So if you can raise the income by adding washer and dryer units, it makes some money, or you can add storage units on the property, or you can have the tenants stop paying for water, or start paying for water or trash or whatever that you're paying for. Well, as soon as you raise that profit, right, that price goes up a significant amount. Depends on all the different factors in commercial loans. So that's cool. That's great. And you said that was in Memphis. So how did you end up finding these deals? So you said you found a property manager down there first. Is that what you did? And then he kind of pointed you in the right direction?
Yeah. So a lot of the deal finding that we've been doing has been more subscribing to automated listings and stuff. We're still trying to figure out the deal finding. I have emails from wholesalers coming in every week. That's more on the single family side, which we're trying to, as you were saying, move into more of that commercial space, because we like that value add from raising the rents, or lowering your costs. So for this one in particular, it was just looking at my emails from Zillow and Realtor.com, essentially, every time I got an email, and making sure that I saw that, you know, the properties going on the market, I knew what they were. So like this one, it went on the market. We were leaving on vacation for France that day, but I really wanted to put an offer in on this. So we did that day, put an offer in on the place. We got to France and the offer was accepted. And so we started the process while we were on vacation.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. Things for us, and I'm sure they do for everyone else, it's like a slow burn, and then all of a sudden everything happens at once. So we were leaving for the airport in about 4 hours, and we got a call saying the offer was accepted and we needed to find a commercial loan immediately. And so we spent those couple hours before we went to the airport calling every lender that we could get a hold of. And it was, of course, right at the end of the day, and
On a Friday.
And so Wells Fargo was pretty much the only one that answered the phone and was like, "Oh yeah, we can give you a commercial loan."
I called like 15 people at least.
It was insane, but I would have it no other way.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they're probably your next deal. You'll probably do it a little differently and you have some more things set up. But at the same time, you got this one under contract, right? You're doing it. You're making it happen. So might be making some mistakes, but you're going to be making money when other people aren't. So that's great. How did you find your agent? Was it you just contacted the agent that listed the property, or what?
So we're actually still using the property manager as our agent even for this one, so representing us, which is nice because he's doing things like he went there for the inspection and did, walk through the whole thing, sent us videos and pictures. And then of course there's a listing agent. It's a little bit different than how a lot of people approach the multifamily thing. They might just approach the broker directly so that he can update them with listings. But in this case, it just worked out that we put in an offer through our own agent.
Okay, so your agent and your property manager is the same person.
Yeah, the same person. Yeah, he has a partner, and the two of them own this property management company. He is an agent. I don't know if he has any other agents in the company.
I'm not sure, but his partner is his broker.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they have this company, and actually it kind of just worked out this way. When we were researching property managers, we stumbled upon him, and we spoke to a lot of property managers, and he was the most relatable and
it's like, like all of them had systems and stuff, and I'm sure there was other ones that like had decent systems and could have worked out, but he was the only one that I liked on the phone that we talked to.
We knew we'd be talking to him a lot on the phone, so it needed to be someone that we liked.
Right.
He's a great guy, and he has good systems set up. He knows everyone. He's good at building those relationships.
Yeah.
So that's good.
So you just so pretty much you just had a list of property managers that you were trying to contact, talked to a bunch of them. You figured out this guy seems legit. He seems nice and like level-headed. So it just happened to luck out that he also was a broker, an agent. And so you guys flew down there, and then you kind of like checked out the area. He kind of gave you an idea where you can and can't go. Is that sort of thing? Is that how it happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've gone down to Memphis once so far. We've never actually seen any of the properties that we have, the one that we own or the one that we have under contract. We trust him that if he feels that he's willing to manage the property, then we want to be in it. And if he says to us, "I don't want to manage this property," then we know that's a property we don't want to own. So the first time that we met with him, he essentially handed us a map, and he was like, "This is a good area, this is a bad area," and circled everything. So we could really take that back with us and then explore the market a little bit more deeply. I mean, at one point it was Jeff could literally tell you every property that was on the market in Memphis. I'd send him things to be like, "Jeff, this one looks like a good one." He's like, "Nope, already looked at it. It's not a good one." So we really were able to entrench ourselves in the market and really understand what streets are good, what are not. But just a lot of research, a lot of just kind of constant attention to make sure that we understood the market as it was evolving.
Okay, so I'll dig a little bit deeper on that. So pretty much your manager / broker told you these are good areas, these are bad areas. You guys flew down there. You took a day or two or a couple days, drove around the areas that he said to check out. You kind of got familiar. Then you came home And while you're at home, you're just looking at deals that would pop up on the MLS or on LoopNet or wherever. And then you would kind of just look on a map, or how would you know, like, okay, this is on 19213 45th Street. How would you know where that is in relation to, what is good or bad?
Yeah.
So a lot of it, like I was doing a lot of this part. So like a book that's great for this kind of stuff is David's book on David Green, his book on long distance real estate investing. He gives some good tips on how to do this. Basically what I did is I would get an address, I would look it up on the Trulia crime map immediately. And I would zoom in and I'd, see how many crimes there were, but also look at the specific crimes. Like there's a decent amount of crime in Memphis, especially centered in specific areas, and it can be street by street. So, if you're looking at something and you see a high crime rate, that might just be because that's a touristy section and there was lots of pickpockets or something. But you might look at another area and there was like 3 shootings. So there's a very obvious difference between those areas. Like one would be like, okay, that's not so bad to buy in, and the other would be really bad.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. You get a good sense of the neighborhood from that. Google Maps helps a little bit. You can sort of drive around and get a sense of the street. Like if you go down the street and you see a toilet in the front yard, that's probably not a great street. There was one time that a wholesaler sent us a deal, and I was looking at it, I was like, I guess this isn't so bad. It needs some work. And so I was panning around and I looked across the street, and there was actually a drug deal happening on Google. And you could see them on Street View. You'd go down the street and you'd see them doing something, exchanging things, and then this car gets right in front of them. They look surprised, and then the car starts driving away, and they're yelling after the car.
Yeah, and there's a guy covering his face, and so Jeff emailed the wholesaler, and he's like, "You might wanna not. No one's probably gonna want to buy this."
Yeah. That's crazy.
A lot of it is just knowing that specific street because that's really everything. I look at the rents for the area and the price and how that matches up, and you can go into depth on that. But the biggest thing is are people going to want to live in this area?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I've never heard that about seeing a drug deal go down on Google Maps.
I have in the past that there has been some crimes that have been caught on Google Street Maps because they're driving around so often. So just be aware. The eyes are everywhere.
They're everywhere. I know. So you mentioned wholesalers. How did you get on the list of wholesalers, or how do you even find wholesalers, first of all? Well, first, what is a wholesaler? If somebody doesn't know.
So a wholesaler is essentially someone that goes around looking for deals. So they might send out direct mailers. They might door knock. They're the ones on the ground that are just finding people who want to sell their house. So what they'll do, and there's a variety of ways to do it, and there's a variety of legal ways to do it that I'm not super familiar with. But basically they'll say, okay, I'll sell you, I'll buy your house. And they'll assign it to a different person. They might not tell the seller that they're going to do this, but they write up a whole contract. Then they go to their list of buyers and say, hey guys, here's this house that I'm selling. I'll sell it for this much. Here's some details about it. Here's some pictures. And so someone might say, yeah, I'll buy it for that much. And so they pay the contract, and the wholesaler takes a small cut, essentially. They write into the contract that they'll get, say, $5,000 from it.
So let's say, for example, they'll find a house, they'll offer the owners of the house, hey, I'll buy your house for $100,000. And they say, okay, we'll agree on that. They sign the contract. Then they have a list of buyers, and they go to the buyers and say, hey, I'm selling this house for $120,000. Does anybody want to buy it? Somebody comes and says, I'll take it for $120,000. They make a closing date, the same date usually as the closing with the owner of the property. They do a double close most of the time at the same day. They buy the house for $100,000 from the seller. They sell the house for $120,000, and they get the profit in between. That's what they do, right?
Yeah, that was a great explanation.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, well, and so how did you find these wholesalers?
So a lot of it is really just reaching out. Bigger Pockets is a great place for it. So our agent is great at making connections, but isn't amazing deal finder. So I decided like I need to find more deal finders. So I just sat down and I searched on BiggerPockets for wholesalers in Memphis, like the used keywords, and I got this massive list of people. And some of them, like obviously, like had never done it before. They had been on there for a year, or they'd been there for 5 years and they had zero activity. So I ignored those ones. Anyone who had like a little bit of activity or actually had a website linked, I would just message them on BiggerPockets like, hey, I'm investing in Memphis. I'm interested in finding deals, like, and I see that you're a wholesaler. Do you have any deals? Like something much better than that. But I sent that to probably like 20 people, and I got maybe like 10 responses, and people saying, yeah, okay, I'll send you things. And then probably about 3 of those people actually send us things.
Yeah, BiggerPockets is an amazing resource. So I'll definitely be linking to that in the show notes. But if anybody wants any of that information, definitely check out BiggerPockets. And man, it's just like the Google for real estate investing. Okay, cool. So do you guys have criteria for your deals? Like anything that you're kind of like trying to stick to, a cash on cash return, or, 1% rule, a 2% rule, anything like that?
Yeah. So in Memphis, at least, like, because it's going to depend on your market. Like Memphis is more of a market for cash flow rather than appreciation over time.
Yeah.
So what we try to do there is around 12% cash on cash return. But much more important than that, like I was saying before, is like what neighborhood we're buying in. Like the property itself is just so much more important than the numbers. Like when we first met our property manager in Memphis, he's like, yeah, these neighborhoods, like the numbers look great. You can buy for 20 grand and you can rent it out for $400 a month. And that just sounds amazing. But, when you turn it over, they're going to steal your water heater. And so you're going to have to replace your water heater every year.
Right.
So that's a terrible investment.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing for us is what neighborhood, but of course, making sure that we're getting a decent cash on cash return. Value add is also really important to us. So like you mentioned for commercial properties, so this 5 unit that we're looking at, there's 2 vacant units in it, and there's 2 units that are under market rent. So we're going to buy that. We're going to raise the rents. We're going to try to reduce expenses. We have a conservative plan to double the value of the property in a year. So like that's huge, right? Because we can refinance out all of our money, or we can sell it and just get a bigger deal. So it's really sort of 3 things, I guess: the value add, some cash on cash return, of course, and then most importantly, the neighborhood that we buy.
Yeah, that's great. So did you find your contractor from your property manager?
Yeah, we met a lot of resources through him. They're all, they've all been great so far.
Yeah, he has great connections in the city. So he's just, anything that we need, he's just bringing it in for us. So that's been fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, that sounds great. So you had mentioned that maybe in a couple of years you'll turn over this property and maybe go into a bigger property or what. So where are you guys kind of headed? Like, what's your goal? Maybe, let's say a 5-year goal. Do you have a unit goal, or what's the plan? Leave your guys' jobs, retire in Fiji, or what? What's the plan?
Yeah. Yeah, I wish. That'd be great. Well, so I think our number 1 goal is really to be able to work together. That is our kind of ultimate goal, and everything else is kind of cherry on top. But yes, so definitely for Jeff to be able to leave his job and join me in focusing on our business so that we can work together. And then we want to move into the multifamily space, larger multifamilies, and continue with that. We'd love for it to be more quote unquote passive at some point.
Yeah, and really, we don't have unit count goals specifically. It's more profit goals. Sorry.
Yeah.
So it's really, our profit goals are, in 5 years, what we've been aiming for is $300 grand a year from rentals.
Yeah.
Passively in rental income.
Yeah.
And, it's like mostly passive, right? Because you still have to manage the managers and find deals and stuff like that.
Sure. And so you're saying that much money from just your rent, or you consider you're going to turn that into maybe some flipping or wholesaling deals yourself, or you kind of want to stick with this type of long-term buy and hold?
Yeah, I think we'll stick with mostly long-term buy and hold. We are about to explore short-term rentals. So as I mentioned, the tenant upstairs turned over, and we have decided to do Airbnb with it. We want to give it a try. I had a colleague before I left my other job who is doing it in our area, and they're having great success. And I know that with short-term rentals, it can be a way to make money more quickly, especially while the economy is good. And then we could always go back to a long-term rental if we decide that it's not for us. But we're interested in it, so we want to explore that. But I think for the most part, long-term rentals are where we will sit.
Cool. Yeah, that's kind of the same avenue I'm headed, but I would be interested in, maybe buying a cabin in a couple of different places that I like, and then Airbnb on the weekends when we're not there. And you can make really a lot of money because you can charge what would yours rent out for per night there in Boston?
Yeah, so we think that we can rent it out for about, oh boy, what was I saying?
I think it's on normal summer days, like 200.
Yeah, 200, between 200 and 280. Right around the Boston Marathon, we think we can charge around 300 or 400. And right around Halloween, because Salem is booming that time of year, same thing, a little bit more. So what we estimate is that we'll only have to rent it out about 10 days a month to actually make what we were making in rent.
That's what I was going to say, is I bet it's probably only like 10 days or maybe a dozen days that you'd have to do. So anything on top of that is just icing on the cake.
Exactly. Yeah, just go more towards our mortgage, and we'll be paying less, can save more, and then invest in another property more quickly.
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited to see where you guys go, and hopefully I'll have you guys on in 5 years, and I'll talk about, your $10 million worth of real estate that you have. That would be great.
Fingers crossed. That was amazing.
Okay, so we're kind of moving to our next little section here. So do you guys have one specific resource that you guys really like to focus on to learn more about, whether it be podcasts or books or radio or seminars? What do you guys really like the most?
Yeah, so definitely Bigger Pockets, which we've mentioned a few times now. But the other thing that we talked a lot about is Bigger Pockets is amazing for people who are new and they want kind of an overview, but to really dig in on it, you really need to be reading just all of the books out there. There's so much literature on real estate investing. And so a couple of the ones that we really liked were Miracle Morning for Millionaires by Hal Elrod and David Osborne, just to not necessarily focused on real estate investing, but it's a really great way to make yourself more productive to get to a point where you can actually focus on what your goals are. Because that's half the battle is really deciding what your goals are and then how to chunk those down into more attainable tasks.
Yeah, and like Taylor was saying, the podcasts are really great. Like they're really great for cursory information. But if you want to get the tactical stuff, like how do I value add? Like what does that even mean exactly? Some great books, especially for beginners, How to Invest in Real Estate by Brandon Turner and Josh Dorkin. And then one that I really liked was Multifamily Millions by David Lindahl. He's fairly local to here, so that's kind of cool.
I have it right here on my bookshelf. I'm looking right at it. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm going to pick up that Miracle Morning for Millionaires. I haven't actually read that one. I know of the other one, just the Miracle Morning, but I haven't got that one. So I'm going to buy that as soon as we're done here. Okay, a favorite app. Do you guys have one favorite or a couple favorite apps that you use? Because obviously, smartphone world these days, something that can make life way easier.
Live on my phone. I'm the phone queen. I'm always attached to my phone. Honestly, Zillow. I'm literally on Zillow hours and hours and hours all day long, just exploring everything, even things that I don't think I'm going to need to know. And eventually I'm like, oh, I remember that listing for XYZ reason, and I really needed to know it, especially locally. I like to look at my dream homes for future. I call that, I'm envisioning, I'm manifesting my future dream home. that does not have a tenant living above me. So
Yeah.
that's I don't know. That's what I focus on.
Yeah, and so as a software engineer, I'm very opinionated about these kinds of things. I try not to spend too much time like on my phone because there's so many other ways to spend time. Most apps are just trying to draw you in to spend time on them, right? Like they don't get money unless you're spending lots of time staring at it. So the things for me that I really like are like setting up automated things on apps. So like Zillow's great because you can set up an automated alert for an area that you're interested in. We've used, Stessa for like syntax stuff. Yeah. That's really nice. Like anything that makes it so you can spend less time on the app those are the kind of apps that I like.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. It's kind of like Upwork or Fiverr. Have you guys used that?
Yes.
I just started using them too. And it's kind of the same thing to where you can take your time, you can make your time more productive by using those apps, right?
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, that's
cool.
really important because it takes, with technology now, there's just so much coming at you all day long. It can be really hard to prioritize. So yeah.
You get lost in it, right? You get lost. Like you think you need all this other stuff and there's always something else you can do. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I haven't got anything done today.
Exactly.
I feel you. Okay. So one piece of the best advice maybe for somebody like just getting started in real estate, what would that be?
I'd say don't be afraid to make a mistake or step outside your comfort zone. You can't be learning unless you're making mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to be uncomfortable. You're gonna be uncomfortable a lot, so you just have to get used to it.
Just do it. And that kind of leads to my next question is a mindset tip, because when you do get overwhelmed, analysis by paralysis, a lot of times I find myself kind of, like stepping back and then getting down and like, my mind gets out of it and I'm not as motivated. So is there something you do to kind of reset yourself and get yourself motivated again?
Yeah, I think a lot about this one because like we just spend so much time having to work. So to me, it's really just all momentum. Like, if you're sitting on the couch watching Netflix, it's easier to stay sitting on the couch watching Netflix. But if you're spending time analyzing a deal, like, just set aside like just one deal a day. Like start with one deal a day. You'll learn something from every one that you analyze. And then it'll become easier to do. So then it'll be like, well, that only took me 15 minutes and here's this other one that looks interesting. So I'll do that. And then you get momentum. And, before you know it, you're spending like 2 hours a day on stuff that you didn't even know you should be spending time on 2 months ago. It's the momentum of getting there that's really keeping you going into like more success.
Yeah. An object in motion stays in motion. So
Yeah, for sure. So that a good tip for that would be probably like set a daily target to do one deal a day. Maybe that's your thing you do, and then that might take you a half an hour at first, and then before you know it, like you said, that half an hour you can do 5, and then you're excited about it and you stay in motion.
Exactly.
Cool. I like that. Okay, and then last little question for the most part is influencer. Do you guys have like there's so many influencers out there, social media, is there somebody you guys like to follow that actually knows what they're talking about and not just trying to make money on Instagram?
Yeah, so I'm going to do 2 and Taylor's going to do 2.
Yeah.
So there's 2 obvious ones, but they really have to call them out. Brandon Turner and David Green, the hosts of the Bigger Pockets Real Estate podcast, they're great. I mean, they like every time either one of them talks, it's like, wow, that's, you really kind of made me feel a little bit more motivated to go do something today because they have so much success and they want to see other people be successful. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And for me, so Ben Kinney and Jillian Harris. So Ben Kinney isn't really so much big on on social media in the way that maybe a Brandon or a David are, but he is incredibly inspiring and motivating whenever I've heard him speak. And then Jillian Harris, I'm not sure how many people actually know who she is. So she was one of the people who did Love It or List It, and now she is really, she's an interior designer, and she's become this huge social media presence who is really focused and pushing values around being more sustainable and in all of the work that she's doing. So I think that she's really inspiring, and I love listening to her talk about the things that she's working on with her family and in her work.
Great. Well, those are awesome. I'm gonna follow Jillian Harris, and I do love Ben Kinney. He was on the Bigger Pockets podcast a while ago, and I've listened to it probably 5 or 6 times. Just like, man, what are you doing? What are you doing in life? You need to jump on the ball.
It was so good.
Okay, well, is there anything else you guys like to say? Any tips or anything else that you might recommend to people?
Yeah, I think the last thing that I'd like to say is that don't let other people dictate your path. Just because someone else isn't willing to do something doesn't mean that it's the wrong path for you. I think that a lot of times when you're new in real estate, people have heard lots of horror stories about things happening, and that can be really scary. But that's okay. Just because it's not for someone else doesn't mean it's not for you.
Definitely. Cool. And then do you guys have anywhere somebody can find out more about you? Instagram, following?
Yeah, so I'm not huge on social media, but you can always email me. My email address is jeff.adams.c, C as in Charlie, @gmail.com.
And I am big on Instagram. So Taylor_C_Adams on Insta. And then my email address is just taylorcadamsrealtor@gmail.com.
Okay. And because you are a real estate agent in Boston market. So if anybody's looking.
Yeah, absolutely. Come to me. So I work with Coldwell Banker. I'm on a team, Reliable Results. We work North Shore area and New Hampshire. So would love to work with you.
Great. Well, Jeff, Taylor, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it. I will link to all this information in the show notes. And if you guys want to buy a house in Boston, an Airbnb, reach out to Taylor.
Awesome. Thanks so much. It's
all right.
Great.
Thanks for being on, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.